Hi, this is Tammy Leggett with J Park Carolina Living. Wanted to come to you today and talk with you about the North Carolina Buyer Agency Agreement. Now we're going to talk about this form. May give you some quick tips about certain things that I've learned over the last 24 years of being in real estate and being a North Carolina real estate broker. So we want to start with the beginning. The beginning, we start with the date. The date that we're going to enter here is today's date. You enter today's date. The next line says between and buyer. On here, my tip for you is to make sure that you have the correct name of your buyer, correct name and correct spelling of your buyer. I can tell you a little short story what happened to me. I know someone for many, many years, called him by one specific name that everyone else knew him by also. And when I went to list his house, sent over the paperwork, he said, Tammy, that's not my name. That's my middle name. My real name is this. And I thought, oh, wow, didn't know that. So that was a little bit more work for me because now I had to go back and change all my documents and forms over to his correct name, trying to save you a little bit of time in advance by having you get the correct name, spelling of your buyer. You also want to ask if your buyer is married. If they are married, you want to enter both of their names here as buyers. And then we get to what if your buyer is an LLC, a corporation, a trust? We want to enter the name of the corporation, LLC, or trust here, not the name of the person you are working with, but the name of the company. And I'll show you a little bit later where we're going to have them sign. And as you see, anything that you see is outlined in blue and has a box around it, North Carolina is trying to tell you something. So here we go over that information again. That is, the buyer is a corporation, limited liability company, trust, or other illegal entity. The entity name should be named as buyer. Okay, we're going to come on down here. We want to make sure that we give our customer, because they're becoming our client once this form is completed and signed. We want to make sure that we have already given them the working with real estate agents form. If you have not, here is a reminder to get that form completed and signed by your buyer. We're going to get down to number one. Number one is telling us the type of property they're looking for. Are they looking for commercial, residential, or it could be looking for both? So we want to check the box of the type of property that they're looking for. And in that general location, we can enter the location that they're looking for. If you know they're looking within a specific city or county, you want to put that information in here. Say you're looking in Gaston County, North Carolina, Gaston and Mecklenburg County, Gaston, Mecklenburg, and Cleveland County of North Carolina. You can enter that location information there. Okay, here is the agreement. We're always going to have a start date of our agreement. So make sure that you're filling this out. This is a compliance area. Make sure that you have a start date and an end date for your agreement. Your start date will be the date that it begins. If it begins today, we want to put today's date. Maybe you're talking with your buyer today and they say, hey, well, I like my agreement to start with you to start on Friday the 16th, then that's the start date that you will put in. And it's always going to have an end date. So if you have a buyer that is looking for a single property, one house, looking at only this one house, can you take me to see this particular house at 123 Main Street? And you say, yes, your buyer can check this box and you will put in the time that this agreement ends. Now, if your buyer, you may be taking your buyer out to look for more than one property, we're going to check this box and we're going to have a termination date. When do this agreement expires? That's the date that we want to enter. Usually I use 6 months to 12 months, depending on the market. At this time, I'm using 6 months because it could take about that long to find your buyer a home. So a minimum of 6 months is what I use. You put in the number that is best for you and your client. Sometime your client will say, I'll work with you and I'll give you 30 days. That would be the end date that you would put in there. Okay, now we're going to go over some compensation for the firm. Now, if your buyer, some realtors collect a retainer fee. If your buyer is willing to pay and you require a retainer fee, you can put in the firm knowledge, a receipt of non-refundable retainer in the amount. So they give you $1,000 retainer fee to help you with marketing, to help you with advertising, to pay for the pictures, whatever that amount is, you want to put that amount here, which shall or shall not. Will this amount go toward their, go to be credited toward your buyer? Sometimes it does not. That $1,000 may actually go to pay for some, marketing and advertising of the property, to have professional pictures taken of the property, to have the property staged, and those funds will not go to the go toward your credit toward your buyer, because they've actually been paid out already to the vendors that took care of those items. Okay, here we're going to go in. The buyer agent agrees that the funds for services shall be an amount of. Here is where we will insert the percentage amount. Do not leave this blank. Will you charge a 5% commission, a 10% commission? Do not insert the MLS number, because we have seen that, because they want you to refer back to the MLS number. Do not insert that. Please insert the amount and do not leave it blank. We're going to go over all the rules. So here are your rules. If your buyer purchased the property when the compensation offered by the listing agent and or seller is less than the fee, it goes over that information. And these are things you definitely want to discuss with your buyer. You do not want to have a buyer that you have on their real estate form or their buyer's agreement that you are accepting a fee of 3%. But then you find them a home that's on the MLS for 2.5%, and there's a 0.5% difference. And you're saying, well, buyer, you signed a contract with me stating that you will give me 3%. So I need you to pay that extra 0.5%. Please go over that with your buyers in advance if that's something that you require. If the buyer is paying on their agreement, 3% is what you put down, and you find a house that's 2.5%, and you are wanting your buyer, or 2%, and you're wanting your buyer to make up that extra difference at closing, make sure your buyer knows that. We're going to come down here. We're going to talk about if within 90 days, 180 days, 1 year, 3 months, whatever number you choose to put here, if within that amount of days after expiration of this agreement, the buyer enters into a contract to acquire property introduced to the buyer during the term of this agreement by the firm or any third party, unless the buyer has entered into a valid buyer agency agreement with another firm. Now, what that means is, if I take this buyer and they sign this agreement with me, and next week I take them in to see a house, and that house that I showed them at 123 Main Street, they said, well, no, I'm quite not interested right now. And then our agreement ends. If within 90 days of this contract ending, that buyer choose to buy the house that you were the original realtor on, you could still get paid, unless they have put in an agreement with another agent. Here are our firm duties, and we want to make sure that one of our duties that we owe the standard of care in satisfying the firm duties, and you want to make sure you know what your firm duties are. The firm should exercise ordinary care, comply with all applicable laws and regulations, and treat all prospective sellers honestly and not knowingly give them false information. And now sellers and our buyers, we cannot give out false information because we owe a standard of care. Okay, we're going to go by buyer duties, because buyers have duties to us just like we have buyers to them, duties to them. So you want to make sure you go over your duties and the buyer duties with your buyer as you go over this agreement, which I do hope that you are doing and not just sending it to be signed, but that you're actually going over this agreement with your buyer. Okay, here buyer's going to acknowledge. So you want to make sure you have those boxes checked, or you can put an initial by those boxes, but the buyer is acknowledging receipt of a copy of the offer to purchase and a professional disclosure in the election form. Now, when you send this over to your buyer, whether you're using DocuSign, you're using Transaction Desk or .loop, but you're using a signing authority to send it over for your signatures, just make sure that you attach this to your agreement and your buyers can sign it at the same time, showing that you have given them a copy. Now, here is number 11, home warranty. This is where we're going to disclose whether we are getting a referral fee from the home warranty company. Some home warranty companies will give realtors $100 back for using their company during their closing. Here on number 11 for home warranty, if I know that I will be using ABC home warranty, and they will be giving me $100 for sending over my client to them and choosing their service. I'm going to disclose that information right here in number 11 to tell my buyer, hey, if you get a warranty, I may get paid $100 for it. Okay. We're going to come down here. We're going to talk about some additional provisions. For example, the agent will not have permission to disclose the buyer's name, like in paragraph 7 of the agreement states that a provision to that effect will be inserted in the space. So if you have any additional additional provisions, you want to put that in 13, and this is only related between you and your buyer. Okay. Here's what we're going to discuss: dual agency and the way that a firm can work with a buyer. We can work as dual agents. Are they going to allow us to work as dual agents? And here where we talk about the buyer side. And then we get into designated agency. If I am your realtor, Mr. Buyer, and you see a house that is with my firm, I become a dual agent if you choose to buy this house. So does the other realtor. But what we can do, Mr. Buyer, if you allow, I will become your designated agent, and the realtor B with my firm will become the designated agent for their seller. Are you okay with that? If so, okay, we're going to make sure that they sign and they know about this information. Okay. As an individual agent may not be designated to represent a party in a transaction if the agent has received confidential information. So if you have received confidential information from one side or the other, you cannot be a dual agent. You can be a designated, but you cannot be a dual agent in that transaction. You may not be a designated agent. So you cannot carry out that transaction from the side because you have confidential information. So I want to repeat, if an individual agent may not be designated to represent a party in a transaction if that agent has received confidential information concerning the other party in connection with this transaction. So I want to make sure we know that. Okay, now we're going to get where they actually authorize us. So here, your buyer will initial if they do or do not authorize you to be both the seller's agent and the buyer's agent. Okay. And then do you know that you could have exclusive representation? This is where they would check this box. If they want exclusive representation, which means they do not want you working as a seller's agent, just their buyer's agent. You're no longer can represent anyone else as a part of this particular transaction with this particular buyer. But if you allow me, Mr. Buyer, to be a dual agent, I must tell you how I'm going to get paid. Usually for me, and everyone is different. Remember, there is no definite fee across the board. So for me, if the firm acts as a dual agent, I must tell the buyer how I will be paid. And this is the total fee the firm expects to receive on both sides. So I expect 6%, Mr. Seller. I expect 5%. I will be paid 5%. And when I'm working for both the buyer and the seller, I will be paid 6%. That is the information that you put here. Then we go over the termination and the breach. And you want to make sure that you and your client understand how this contract or agreement can be terminated and or breached. You want to go over photography, photographs, and videos. And we wanted to make sure that we talk with them about wire fraud. We as realtors will not get the information of our buyer to send in a wire. We want to make sure they're giving that information directly to the attorney and the attorney only. But here we talk about wire fraud. And hey, here's that part where your buyer's you're going to enter your buyer's printed name, have your buyer sign through whatever signing authority you're using. You can enter their home address, their cell phone, their email address, because you're not the only one that will receive this offer to you're the only person that will receive this. When we talk about the offer to purchase, we want to make sure that information on there because you will not be the only one that receives it. It'll be going over to your attorney. This will be shared with you and your brokerage. Now, we spoke earlier about what if the company that is your client is an LLC, a corporation, or a partnership. Here's where that information would go. The name of the entity would be here. And here is the officer's name. The person that is actually speaking with you or have the signing authority will sign on this line, dated, and also put their title along with their contact information. You will fill in your real estate firm name, your real estate firm number, phone number, office address, and of course, we as the agent sign it, put our individual license number, dated, put our phone number, email address, and we have completed this form. It is now ready to send over to our buyer to have signed.